Hi everybody, and welcome to today's video where we're going to run you through a range of strategies that you can use to improve your comparative paragraph writing. My name is Ben, and the way in which we're going to help you today is with a sample paragraph that I've written for you based on The Queen and Ransom. And there are three features of this paragraph that we want to point out to you today so that you can see how you can be more analytical, more comparative, and more succinct when you approach this area of study. Let's jump in. And so the paragraph begins. Throughout both texts, it is the occurrence of unprecedented events that is the impetus for drastic changes. However, the texts diverge in the difference between societies and leaders changing their outlooks, as well as the acceptance of change or reluctance to change shown by leaders. Whilst Priam is moved by the death of his son to initiate drastic action, Queen Elizabeth is instead thrust into an unprecedented event, one that she shows great resistance in accepting. And so we're going to stop here to take you through the first feature that we want you to notice, and that is the sentence starters that have allowed this piece to not just be fluent but also very comparative right from the start. If we take a look at them throughout both texts, however, the texts diverge, and also whilst Priam. These are all sentence structures that are all quite simple. There's no ridiculously sophisticated words or language being used there, but they're all effective words that allow you to be comparative. And if you take a look at the way in which those sentences are structured, it allows for discussion of both texts together. You'll notice that we've put that writing there in purple where it's looking at both texts in this very holistic fashion. And it allows for the writer to make sure that they're talking about both texts and being comparative right from the outset. There's no sense of someone who has written a text response about one text and then a text response about the other and then tried to tie it up with comparison at the end. This is weaving between the two texts and moving between them seamlessly, and it's the language that allows them to do that. Take a look at the sentence starters for the rest of the paragraph and then consider how you could perhaps be using these things when you're writing your own practice pieces, because once we get used to using these structures, they become effective habits that we use all the way through for our planning for our SACs and then for our exam revision. So when you're sitting there on the exam day, you're ready to go because you know the structure that you're going to follow. It's just the content that you need to fill in around it that's going to decide how well you write your piece. There's also the second feature that I want to point out to you here, and you'll see this a couple of times throughout the paragraph, and that is the idea of these subtle comparisons being made. Not all comparisons need to be blunt and blatant and hitting the reader of the essay in the face. Of course, it should always make sure that we're focused on comparison, and there's always time to have that very clear sentence and those clear parts of comparison. But around that, if we want to lift the fluency and we want to lift the sophistication of our piece, we can include sentences that are subtly comparing as they go through. It just means that if we can do this throughout all of our three body paragraphs, that the reader, the assessor, your teacher, gets to the end of it and they're left in no doubt about how much you have compared and the level to which you have been able to compare throughout your entire piece. It means that it's going to read a lot better than a piece that, for example, has just got the one sentence of comparison in it. And the main one where you can see that is the sentence that I'm highlighting now that says, whilst Priam is moved by the death of his son to initiate drastic action, Queen Elizabeth is instead thrust into an unprecedented event. Now, it's not the world's best comparison, but it is definitely something that shows that I have an understanding of how these characters differ. And I'm not just simply saying that really they're the same kind of person. It makes sure that I'm also looking at the overall consequences of how these characters find themselves where they do. Let's move on to see what the rest of the paragraph does. Frears depicts a world that has gone beyond normal circumstances and where protocol has been swept aside. His inclusion of news footage and headlines, coupled with Blair's team's confusion and frustration with the Queen, highlight the dramatic shift in values that she takes so very long to see and accept. Contrastingly, Priam finds himself as the sole driver of change amongst a society which daily sends its warriors to war and cannot see past the old way of thinking. Ironically, it is Queen Elizabeth's monarchy who survives the change to the status quo, whilst Troy tragically falls through another episode of war and bloodshed. And so this is where we're going to look at the third feature of today's paragraph, and that is the balance of how both of these texts have been integrated into the paragraph. We've made this a little bit easier for you by color coding the text that we've used there. And you'll notice that in red we have all of the discussion of the Queen, then to see the blue text looking at where we have brought up evidence and analysis of Ransom, and then ultimately those purple sentences where both of those things are combined. Now, I do want to make a point here that even though we look at it in this coloured way, you can see that it goes blue, red, purple, blue, red, purple. This is by no means a recipe. We're not espousing that you should be using a formula here or that there's one way to write this paragraph. There are many different ways to go about this. We're showing you one way that might help you work with this a little bit better. I don't want people looking through this video and saying, right, I need to write 2 blue sentences, a couple of red, and then 1 purple or anything like that. Take a look at it and see if it works for you. What you'll notice though is that this paragraph moves from this section here with the red text talking about just the Queen to then bring it straight to a comparison with contrastingly Priam finds himself, so we're talking about Ransom, which allows it to then move into the discussion of both of them together. If you read through the next part with me with this in mind, you'll notice that it does this again. However, this time it goes in reverse where it actually talks about Ransom, only to then move to a discussion of some evidence from the Queen, to then finish with that amalgamation of both the text and the comparisons that can be drawn by the fact that they have both been referred to so seamlessly. As I mentioned to you for our first feature of this paragraph, take a look at the sentence starters and look at the language that allows this to move fluently between texts. Quite often there's students that just give up on these types of things because they feel like they're not a good enough writer, when really it's just about knowing the tricks and how to use these things at the beginning of each sentence to allow you to do them. And by taking the lid off these things today, I hope that you get an understanding that there's things that you can do to improve your fluency and to improve your ability to introduce evidence and get to comparison. Let's take a look at how it finishes. This continuance of revenge and conflict is highlighted by Malouf's description of the bronze-haired avenger Neoptolemus, who feels animal sadness, despondency, upon slaughtering Priam. Malouf further points out that the final days of the war belong to Neoptolemus, thus emphasising the tragedy in individuals and societies not being prepared to develop and embrace new ways of thinking. Although she admittedly will never understand the drastic shift in her society, Queen Elizabeth is able to move with her people and modernise. This movement is valued by both creators through their texts. Although they illustrate the point through different means, both outline that drastic changes within a society call for individuals to enter a new sphere or a way of understanding, and failure to do this can be catastrophic. And so if we take a look at that last sentence, we can see the very simple structure of how it begins with that word although. And words like this are going to be your best friend when it comes to writing these paragraphs, because it means that you're starting a sentence with going down one path, only to then go down another by the time that you finish it. Although the Queen may show us this, Ransom shows us this. You can do this with other terms like however and whilst, and these are the sorts of habits that you should be practicing in the lead up to your SAC. So that's all for the paragraph today. If you have any questions about this pairing or anything that we've brought up today that you'd like further clarification on, please make sure that you put something down in the comments section. We'd be more than happy to be able to help you out, and our aim here at the English Lab is to be really interactive with those who need some help and some guidance, not just through the videos that we create, but also through the comments and the ways that we can help you out down there. Also, if you have got something out of the video, you can support us by clicking on the like button and by sharing this video with friends of yours that you know that are studying the same texts. We also have videos on all of the other comparative texts and some other videos coming up as well. The best way you can keep on top of all of those upcoming videos that are here to help you with your VCE English journey is to subscribe to our channel. That way you'll receive notifications when we upload new videos, not just on the comparative text, but on the 2 other areas of study as well. But until next time, thanks very much for watching, and all the best with your future studies.